In 2019, intermittent fasting was the #1 search diet and everyone seemed to be talking about it. But is intermittent fasting really all that healthy? And more importantly, is it safe? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about 3 things you need to know before you even start to consider about fasting. So stay tuned. What's going on, family? This is Edward Williams, licensed physician assistant and founder and creator of Health by Any Means Necessary. And I want to welcome you to our channel where we talk about all things Black health improvement and insulin resistance. So if you're new here, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the alerts so you can be notified every Monday and Thursday when we release a new video. Now, the topic of fasting seems to horrify most people, and this is especially true when I'm dealing with my patients. When I mention fasting, they start mentioning things such as, I'm going to die, I'm going to starve, I'm going to pass out, I'm going to have low energy, I won't make it, I'm going to wreck my metabolism. And I don't blame them. I know it's not their fault. I know that there's been a concerted effort to demonize and vilify the idea of fasting, the practice of fasting, and that fear-mongering has been driven by Western healthcare and food industry. And so in this video, I'm going to make the case that you have been frightened away from one of the most beneficial and empowering things you can do for your body in exchange for 6 small meals a day, eating every 2 to 3 hours, the obesity epidemic, and the diabetes epidemic. Now, when it comes to thoroughly examining anything, Dr. Malefe Kente Asante from Temple University recommends that we start with chronology, the timeline. And this makes sense because history really is the only thing that's real. The present is still becoming. The future is not here yet, so it's not real. However, history has already come and gone. We can actually now look back at history, break it down, examine it, and understand the impact that it's had on us. And when we look at history of fasting, the first thing that I need you to understand is that fasting is old. I mean, old. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. We're talking about being practiced by billions of people, billions with a B. And just so you can get an idea of just how old fasting is, even before the parents of popular ancient civilization, hunter-gatherers across the globe reaped the benefits of intermittent fasting. In many areas, ancient civilizations like the ancient Egyptians possess knowledge that modern-day scholars and doctors struggle to understand even today. Written sources show that ancient African cultures used intermittent fasting and were fully aware of its effectiveness in order to help their bodies recover and reap the health benefits it offered. In ancient Kemet, also known as Egypt, people used intermittent fasting to treat certain diseases, but also as a form of prevention. Ancient Africans believed that fasting preserved their health and prolonged both youthfulness and life. Egyptians, they clearly recognized that excessive eating caused diseases in their lives. On one Egyptian pyramid, the inscription says that human lives on 1/4 of what they eat, on the other 3/4 lives their doctors. So once again, fasting is old. It's been practiced for thousands and thousands of years by billions of people. It has literally stood the test of time. But not only has it stood the test of time, it has a great track record. In fact, if fasting didn't have a great track record, we would know about it. Now, before we move on to the next thing that you need to know before you start fasting, is that I want to make sure we are careful about having things that are original to us, repackaged, and then resold to us. And what I mean is that I know we hear about all these new terms for fasting, such as OMAD or the 16-8 or lean gains and the 5-2. And that's cool and all. Let them do what they do. But at the same time, we need to understand that this is extremely old to us, not just in Africa, but also here in America. We've had many influential Black leaders come through and be strong advocates for fasting. I'm talking about Elijah Muhammad, Dick Gregory, Dr. Sebi, Llaila Afrika, and so much more. We can't push aside what they have brought to us to the forefront for radical improvement for our community. So we just need to make sure that we don't get too dewy-eyed, as Dr. John Henry Clark would say, about the information while pushing aside the information that so many who have come before us have already laid out to us. All right. So once again, fasting is old. It has stood the test of time. And if there was something so detrimental and evil about fasting, we would have heard about it. Hey, you know what? Speaking of history, you know what we should do? We should look into the history of these medications that so many of us are taking right now, like the metformin, the glimepiride, the hydrochlorothiazide, the amlodipine, the lisinopril, the insulin. We should look at those medications and see how they impact us and see what the history. No. Too much. Okay. All right.
Too much.
Let's get back to it. All right. So the second thing you need to know about fasting is that you're already fasting. Now, we've talked about everybody else's experience with fasting, but right now what I want to know is what has been your personal experience with fasting? How has fasting affected you? Have you fasted before? Don't answer that because it's a trick question. And this brings a sigh of relief to many of my patients. So when I'm sitting down with my patients and I'm telling them about the fasting protocol that they're about to be prescribed, they hear that numbers of 16, 12, and 18, and they're like, oh my goodness. But then I let them know that they're already fasting. And in fact, the majority of the fasting has already been done for them while they are sleeping. That's right. When you're sleeping, you're not eating anything, which means you're fasting. And so this really takes a lot of the stress and the concerns that so many people have when it comes to fasting, because most people picture fasting as being this horrible, daunting task that they're doing throughout the day. And yes, fasting can be done throughout the day, but one of the best places to start when you're brand new to fasting is while you're sleeping. So an example where if you go to bed at 8 o'clock and you have your last meal at 8 o'clock and you wake up at 8 o'clock and you eat your first meal at 8 o'clock, well, guess what? That's 12 hours of fasting. Now, the average person in America sleeps about 8 hours. And so even if we bring it down to 8 hours, that is still 8 hours that you have out of the way as it pertains to fasting. And that is 8 hours of strong, solid fasting where your body has had the chance to do the things that I'm going to tell you about in the third step. So that's right. 8 hours of fasting being done while you are sleeping. So if your goal is to do 12 hours of fasting, well, you only have 4 more hours left to go. So another thing that I want you to think about is that we all fast every single day when we sleep. Fasting while we're sleeping is something very natural to us. And so what you have when we talk about this country, America, and as far as their guidelines and recommendations when it comes to food, we have something that is so natural and innate and instinctual to us, such as fasting, being demonized and vilified as something that we should not do. In exchange, we're being given a plate of fragility. We can't fast. Something's going to happen to you. It's unhealthy with no explanation behind it. All right, let's keep going. So just remember, you're already fasting. Most of the work is going to be done while you're sleeping. And if you want to increase that amount of time that you're fasting, you can do what I call the buffering method. This is when you're buffering your eating times and your fasting times. So if your last meal is at 8 p.m. at night and your first meal is 8 a.m. in the morning, the next day, I want you to buffer out 30 minutes on both sides. So next day, 7:30 or 7 o'clock. Let it be your last time you eat, and make 9 o'clock or 9:30 be the first time. And next thing you know, you have that 8 hours or that 12 hours turned into 13, 14, so on and so forth. That's what I recommend for my new patients when they're just getting started with fasting. And for number 3, it's the healthiest thing you can do for your body and health. So what we need to understand is that here at H-BAMN, our mission is to aggressively inspire and radically improve the health conditions of our community. And we have a strong focus on insulin resistance. The reason why we focus so hard on insulin resistance because most of the conditions that we deal with in our community center around insulin resistance, meaning that these quote unquote diseases that we see plaguing us in the Black community or being caused or their result or an effect or an adaptation to insulin resistance. Without insulin resistance, most of these things are not able to manifest itself or be diagnosed. And so I'm talking about things such as high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, PCOS, also known as polycystic ovarian syndrome, obesity, erectile dysfunction, gynecomastia. These things are sitting on the platform, the foundation of insulin resistance. Now, it's not limited to these things, but I only have room for those. Also things such as high cholesterol, so-called high cholesterol, also sits on this platform. And so the reason why we focus so hard on insulin resistance as far as radically improving it is because if we solve the issue of insulin resistance, the other quote unquote conditions or diseases, which they're not conditions and diseases, they are adaptations. They are the actual, the effects of the insulin resistance. Once we start to deal with that problem, the root, then these other things decrease as well or improve. So let's understand insulin resistance. Now, insulin resistance is going to be a topic that I'm going to go very in depth in another video. It won't be this video. So I'm going to do a quick overview of it. So once again, these conditions are a response to insulin resistant. Our cells are insulin resistant because they have downregulated the insulin receptors because there is a chronic elevation of insulin in the bloodstream. This insulin is being secreted by the pancreas. The pancreas is secreting insulin in response to food entering the system. Now, when we get down to this part of the equation, we're talking about the food, there's two metrics I need for us to talk about. We need to focus on. The first metric is going to be the quality of food. So for most of us, let's keep it real, we're eating horrible food. We're eating the standard American diet. I call it nutritional colonizers. Then the other metric is the frequency of that horrible food. If you are taking the advice and recommendations of Western society, Western philosophy, with the eating every 2 to 3 hours, 6 small meals a day, grazing all day long as if we were cows, then that is going to also be a problem. And so each of those metrics alone is a problem itself, but when you combine them, they become a mega power, a mega problem. And so doing those things combined with the frequency and the horrible foods, this creates insulin resistance. And over time, the insulin resistance starts to manifest itself as one of these quote unquote diseases, but they're not diseases. So my recommendation is that we improve those two metrics. We improve the quality of the food by eating whole foods. And the next part of the metric, we decrease the frequency and we improve the frequency by fasting. Once again, both of these topics I'm going to go very in depth in other videos, but right now we're going to stick to the 3 things you need to know about it. So improve those two metrics. Once you improve those two metrics, insulin will start to decrease. Insulin will start to normalize. Once insulin starts to normalize, these conditions, or maybe you are dealing with one, so you might think you're dealing with one. Either way, these conditions will also start to improve as well. Now, in the description below, I'm going to give you several links for the conditions that I'm about to speak about. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you several links about how fasting has improved all these conditions that I'm talking about. However, right now, I'm going to give you my personal experience with my personal clients and patients. Once again, I understand that my experience with my clients and patients doesn't mean that it's the gospel. However, I have seen this, I have done this hundreds and hundreds of times, but also the research, the literature will validate and back up a lot of what I'm saying. Now, personally, I have patients have all of these conditions and radically improve them all. I've had patients on blood pressure medications, have blood pressure of 190 over 110, fast, eat healthy, and get to the point where not only do they no longer have high blood pressure, but they have to get off the medication because the therapeutic effects of the fasting plus the medications are too much. And so the medication has to go. I've had patients and clients who were diabetic, had an A1C of 12.5 or higher or lower, fast, and eat healthy and get moving and get to the point where they no longer meet the diagnostic criteria to be considered to be diabetic. Not only that, they no longer meet the criteria to continue taking medications, including insulin. And this is the same thing for high cholesterol, and it's definitely the same thing for obesity. I've had patients lose anywhere from 80 to 100 pounds from fasting, while also decreasing the quote unquote excess skin that comes along or goes along with the weight loss. So we have to understand that fasting is a powerful tool. And somehow the medical industry, healthcare industry, chooses to tell their patients and their clients to stay away from it. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, maybe it's just me. Now, for those who have been following me for a while, you understand that I'm well known for telling you that the medications that you're taking for high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, cholesterol, forget about it. I am known for saying that they don't work. And what I mean by they don't work is that as far as mortality and morbidity, the things that you really care about, it does not improve the mortality and morbidity. Yes, you may get your blood pressure taken and the blood pressure may be lower. You may be feeling like crap, you may be feeling lightheaded, but your blood pressure is lower. Yes, you may do a finger stick or get your blood work done and your blood sugar looks better and your A1C looks lower. You may be going to the bathroom, maybe having frequent yeast infections or UTIs, but the blood work and the finger stick looks great. Cholesterol numbers may be lower. Yeah, you may be having muscle aches and liver problems, but the cholesterol looks lower. And so what the quote unquote healthcare system has turned into metric management, metric obsession, where they seem to be so focused on the numbers and the labs versus the patient and versus where we're trying to get the patients to accomplish. And the place we're trying to get the patients to accomplish, supposedly, is an improvement in mortality and morbidity. Mortality, of course, is death rates. People are taking medications because they don't want to die of a heart attack. People are taking medications because they don't have kidney failure. People are taking medications because they don't have an amputation. People are taking medications because they don't want to go blind. That's why people are taking medications, or so they thought that's why they were taking medications. And so one would think if I'm taking these medications, the medications will prevent these things from happening. And what I'm telling you is that when we look at the ADVANCE study, the VDAT study, the ACCORD study, when we look at so many of these trials, we don't see the mortality or morbidity being improved. Morbidity is going to be the diseases and the complications that this quote unquote disease breeds. Once again, we don't see that. And so this is why I'm so hard when it comes to these medications, because they don't improve mortality and morbidity. Yes, they may make you look better and feel better in the short term, and they may make your numbers look better. But what does that mean when we're talking about mortality and morbidity? Now, if I'm going to be that hard on the side of medications, one would have to make the argument that I need to be just as hard when it comes to interrogating fasting. Where I'm from, we call it keeping that same energy. They're going to tell me I got to keep that same energy when it comes to fasting. So what about fasting? Can fasting improve mortality and morbidity? So we know that it can improve morbidity, the diseases and the complications that go along with it. Once again, read the links in below this description. Also, I just told you about my personal experience. So that's morbidity, that's the disease and the complications that go along with it. But what about mortality, the death rates? Can fasting actually improve or decrease the death rates? Better yet, can fasting actually extend your lifespan? In recent times, scientists have started investigating intermittent fasting even more. A recent study by Harvard scientists has shown how intermittent fasting is not only healthy, but it can also help you live longer. Experts from Harvard have found that by manipulating mitochondrial networks inside the cells, either by dietary restriction or genetic manipulation that mimics it, a person could increase their lifespan and help promote health. The study, published in the journal Cell Metabolism, details advances made in the research of mitochondrial connections and explains how intermittent fasting is crucial to increasing lifespan. So in conclusion, to answer your question, is fasting healthy and safe? The answer is yes. All right, so just to wrap it up, fasting is old. Fasting's been around for a very long time. It's still the test of time. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. Billions of people have done it. You're already doing it at night when you're sleeping. And it's one of the few things that have been shown to improve chronic conditions. And it's one of the only things that have been shown to actually increase your lifespan. So, question of the day, what has been your experience with fasting? Have you fasted before? And if you haven't fasted before, do you want to? Or are you intimidated? Chop it up below. Let us know your thoughts, your concerns, and I will comment below, and the community will also comment to you as well too, because we have a lot of people in this community who are experienced fasters. Now, if you want to learn more about fasting or get coached by my team and I, be sure to click on the link in the description and learn more about the program that we have coming up where our members are getting radical results. Click on the link, check it out. And lastly, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. That way you can be notified every Monday and Thursday when we upload a new video. All right, everybody, this is your brother Edward Williams signing off. And remember, this is our community, our responsibility. We have what it takes. Let's get it. Peace. Hell yes. Hell yeah. Which one is it? Hell yeah, hell yes.